Good morning, YouTube. All right, it is time we revisit some old classics that need a little bit of a refresh. Perfectly good information in my old videos. We just need to revisit and talk about a few more things, okay? Today we are talking about chicken broth. We're gonna start at the beginning. We're gonna go all the way through. I'm gonna show you every variation you can get. And by the time you're done, you're gonna see why this stuff is like a magic potion in your kitchen. All right, let's cook, y'all. We got a family to feed. All right, now if you're here for just a quick and easy video on how to make chicken broth, this is probably not the video for you because we're gonna deep dive into this. I personally think chicken broth, homemade chicken broth, is one of the most important things I ever learned how to do. So I'm gonna seriously talk about all the different elements I can think of that will help you have some incredible success in your own kitchen, okay? To start with, you do need a handful of ingredients. I have fresh parsley, fresh thyme, I have carrots, I have onion. I'm gonna grab some celery, and I'll grab a few seasonings out of my cupboard here in just a minute. But the last thing that we need, of course, is a chicken. Okay? Now, at this stage, there are a couple of things you can do depending on how you want your final result to turn out. If you're making a simple country dish like chicken and dumplings or chicken and rice, I would just throw this puppy in there the way it is, right? Don't worry about skinning it or deboning it or what have you. I'm also, in this version of simple chicken stock, I'm not gonna roast anything first. If you do roast, and I'm gonna show you how to do that version as well, but if you do roast, you get a darker, richer, deeper flavor. But there are sometimes reasons why you want to do the broth with just the bird as it is, right? What I'm going to ultimately produce here is what's called chicken consomme. It's gonna happen over a couple of different videos. You also call it double chicken broth. This just means you're gonna end up with a super rich, incredibly nutrient dense, loaded with protein product that is out of this world delicious, okay? I'm gonna show you how to do that. None of it is hard. It takes some patience. That's it, okay? All right, so let's start with our chicken. This is just about a 3.5 to 4 pound chicken. I got it at the big box store where you get 2 in 1 bag, you know, that guy. Now, because the amount of fat that ends up in chicken broth can be a big deal, right? It really affects things like, it'll affect how cloudy or how clear your broth is. And if you're making a consomme, that's important. I don't know who's texting me, but I'm gonna ignore it for now. So all I'm doing is getting rid of most of the skin. Not 100%, but most. And if you see this, see, that's a big fatty part near the tail. That's the tail, but near the tail of the bird, I'm gonna cut that off. Now, it does not mean we're throwing that away. Why? Because nothing goes to waste in my kitchen, right? Right. We use every scrap. These are our nutrients. This is our food. We paid for it, and we need to get the most out of it. Plus, you know, honestly, there is a part of me that thinks it's just respectful. If you're gonna buy and purchase food, especially meat, use it all. All right, my scissors are not worth a flip. Oh, that was better. I'm not gonna try to get every last scrap off, but I do want the majority of the skin and the fat off of this bird. And if I didn't have very dirty hands, I'd pause my camera and do it off camera. And I don't happen to have, how do I have a house full of kids and not one of them is in here where I can say, hey, hit that button for me? Because that's how it works. They'll show up for food. Actually, Bladen is happily doing yard work today because later on I am making a chocolate and salted caramel tart. I saw something that gave me some inspiration this past weekend, so I'm going to tear that up later on. Okay, so if you look, ta-da! I didn't get all that. I could take that off. I might, but I got most of it off. The majority of the fat is going to reside in here and in here. This is the breast, these are the legs. So you're gonna have pockets like this right there. And I probably am gonna wash my hands and pause it and go ahead and pull off the rest of these bits. The more fat that you pull off of this guy, it's probably a girl, but the more you pull off right now, the clearer your broth will be. And you can produce a broth. Okay, wait a minute. First of all, you can produce a broth that is very nearly fat-free. Secondly, technically speaking, because I am using the bones, this is a chicken stock, right? I think that differentiation used to be very important. I don't think anybody cares anymore very much. But typically, traditionally, technically, if it involves the bones, it is slow simmered and is a stock, which cracks me up because bone broth is not a broth, it's a stock. If it involves just the meat and just the vegetables and seasonings, it's a broth. Okay, so what we're making here actually is a blonde or pale chicken stock, but people don't use that anymore. People don't really refer to it that way. They use broth and stock interchangeably. Language changes, guys. It's fine. All right, I actually got most of that fat off of there. There will be a bunch of fat in that tail, but there's a bone through there and I can't get it off with just my scissors, so I'm not gonna worry about it. Okay, so our chicken is going into our pot. Give me a second to wash my hands. I'm gonna be back and we're gonna talk about the pot and we're gonna talk about all this other stuff that goes with it. All right, so we're back. I got a clean cutting board, I have clean hands, and we're ready to go. So here, let's talk about this first. This is the skin and the fat that I pulled off of that chicken. This goes in a zipper bag, and it's going in the freezer because I told you all that I'm going to be doing a whole bunch of different stocks and broths and that kind of stuff over the next few weeks. So by the time we're all said and done, I'm gonna have a bunch of chicken skin and fat, and that's perfect because I'm gonna make chicken schmaltz, which is to die for, and you'll name kids after me once you do it for yourself. Okay, so let's sorry, I adore some schmaltz. I think it's the best thing ever. All right, where is, here it is. My brother was here last night. He was trying to claim that this is his, and it's not, so we had an argument over the knife sharpener. Okay, celery. Whoop. Celery. Now, we have very simple, very basic flavors. The broth that I am making today is roughly based on a French, classic French chicken broth. Chicken stock, right? Because we got bones. So in that case, we're using the mirepoix, which is celery, onion, and carrot. And we want about twice as much onion as we have celery and carrot. Now, you don't have to chop these tiny. You don't. You don't even have to peel your carrots if you don't want to. Just make sure they're super clean. I'm going to set these aside for a second. Love onion. I love white onion. Probably I should have picked up a white onion. I didn't. I got yellow onion because they are plentiful. They are delicious. They turn sweet when they're cooked. Mainly they're really inexpensive. I buy them at the big box stores and you get a big giant 20-pound bag for next to nothing. Okay? Garlic. Have to have some garlic. We love garlic at our house, so I'm using 4 big fat cloves. And you don't have to do a whole lot to your garlic. You don't have to mince it or whatever. Pop it open like that. Pull the skin off. And this is all you have to do to your garlic. It will simmer as you're simmering everything else, and the water will extract the flavors here too. Why does that skin not want to come off of there? Because it's really super fresh. It means it's super sticky. All right, so, you know, smack it so it's a little rough like that, but don't worry about it too much. Then we have fresh thyme. A lot of times I'll say, hey, you need a bunch of fresh thyme, and people will say, oh, I used 2 sprigs. No, listen. Big hint. Use a bunch. When I say a bunch, use the whole thing. There, see? Look. See? Use a lot. It will make a huge difference and you'll love it. Same with parsley, okay? This is $1 bunch of parsley that I bought at the store. Now, 2 things I will say about parsley, and this is kind of a cool trick if you're stretching dollars. And it doesn't matter if it's in the broth or not. Take your parsley, use the entire bunch of stems, loosely put these in a plastic bag, don't seal the bag, but use it within just a day or 2, but you have the parsley leaves for a different dish. You have just as much flavor in your stems, okay? So all that's going in there. Now, give me a second. I'm going to get our veggies cut up and ready to go, and I'll be back and show you how much water, because you're going to be shocked because it's almost none. Well, no, not very much. All right, if you can stand that little background noise, that's my robot sweeping the floor. I want to show you this, okay? Check this out. All right, do you see? This has actually been probably 45 minutes. Watch right here. Wait a minute, focus on that. Do you see that tiny little bit of movement? Yeah, that's really all we want. And can you see here that little tiny bit of white beginning to form on the rim of the pot? That is protein that is beginning to leach out of the chicken and the bones, and it's going to coagulate on top, okay? See a little tiny bit of movement here? I'll get a better focus. Maybe. So that amount of movement, really, if you keep it right there, it's going to be great, okay? Now, once we get more of the protein and stuff that begins to come up and make the surface look cloudy, no big deal. We're going to take a teaspoon and skim it right off. And in the meantime, we're going to let it go, okay? Nice and low, nice and slow, and we really don't want any kind of, no boil, okay? We don't want any more of a simmer really than this. All right, we are ready to take the next step. So our broth has been on the stove for about 5 hours, okay? And I did just skim off, you know, the gunk that comes at the top, you know, the frothy stuff. So here's our pot of broth. And it has been at this bare simmer, like I said, for about 5 hours. And you can tell, if you look at the onions, how they've gotten translucent, right? And our tomatoes have pretty much given it all up, okay? So there's a couple things we can do at this point, and I'm going to show you how to do at least one of them. So we're going to start straining, okay? Hold on a minute, let me grab our pot. So you can get cheesecloth and strain everything through cheesecloth, which I'm actually going to have to go get some because I can't find mine. I don't know where it went. I had a whole bunch. Usually when this kind of thing happens, I can look to one of the boys finding some kind of kitchen thing and taking off with it. They have something they need to build, or it needs to go in the fort, or there's an art project that just has to happen. So I'm very used to that. All right, so here's what we want to do at this point. I'm going to talk about a couple different things. Because we want a really delicious chicken broth, right? But I also talk about how nothing goes to waste in my kitchen. So I'm walking the line between those two things, right? Best, most delicious, and not wasting food. So when I'm dipping this, let me get the camera over here to show you. When I'm dipping this, our onions have begun to get translucent, but not fully so, right? And our tomatoes have kind of given it up, but there's still something there, okay? Now, I don't know how to pronounce the word for the technique I'm going to tell you to use. I know it is a verb. I know in French it means to re-wet. It looks like you say remouage. But it is my deepest heart's desire to speak fluent French, and I just can't. I can't do it. So I wish I could tell you this is how this is said and this is how you pronounce it, but I'd probably be wrong. So anyway, it is, and here's what it is. It's, you know, it's exactly what it sounds like. You're re-wetting, okay? So after you make broth or stock, in a French kitchen, you have a stage in which your ingredients, say like your chicken right here, which I'm struggling to get out of this pot. This chicken is perfectly cooked. And I'm going to put him over on this plate. I'm going to show you what he looks like here in a second. So this chicken is perfectly cooked. And the breast and the thighs are still delicious. At this point, if you pull all that meat off the bones, it will be great. It'll taste really good. Okay? Well, that's what I'm going to do. If instead I keep going in order to extract every last scrap out of the meat, by the time we're done, the meat will be dry and stringy and nasty, kind of gross, okay? So we're taking a pause, we're pressing pause at this step. We're pulling the chicken out, but our vegetables, see, here's a carrot, and I'm squeezing it. Ah! See, it's got a lot left in it. That carrot's not even all the way cooked through, okay? So this stuff is all going back in the pot. Okay? Our broth, look at this. Our broth, and you can see barely any fat. I don't know, can you see that? Focus right there, camera. It's hard to see because it's almost not even there. There's a tiniest thin layer of fat on top of there, okay? This is going back in the pot. Now, the meat we want to utilize. The bones we want to throw back in the pot because they still have a lot to give, right? So a French technique would be to pick everything apart, put the same ingredients in with a new batch of fresh water, and you would have the first run of stock, which I've tasted. And y'all, it's delicious. Yes, so you could use the broth right here like it is, but we want to go farther. We want to get richer, we want to get deeper, more intense flavor, okay? So I'm going to pull all the chicken off. I'm going to put all the bones back in here, and this is going back on the stove for a while. Yeah, that's what we're doing. Okay, so our pot went back on that same bare simmer for, I guess, about 4 more hours, and by the time it was kind of ready to deal with, it was too dark for me to shoot the video. So I checked it in the refrigerator, let it sit overnight, brought it back out today, turned it on, and it's just been going, okay? And all I'm doing here is doing this initial strain where I'm getting rid of the solids. Now we were talking yesterday about what I think is pronounced remoulage, but I don't know for sure, and I'm not going to swear by anything because as much as I would dearly love to be able to speak French fluently, I kind of suck. So anyway, so the whole idea of re-wet is when you utilize ingredients until there's really nothing left to give up, right? And so here's our carrots. Here we go. Here's our carrots. And you know, yesterday they were still pretty hard. Now they're just soft and squishy. And the meats that were in here, when I pulled the meat off the bone, I actually had to pull it off, right? Now the meats have gone to the point where everything's just falling apart. So you could, if you wanted to, once you have strained all of this initially, and you have your first round of nice clear broth, you could, if you wanted to, put all of these tired ingredients back in the pot, cover it with just enough water to cover it, simmer it again. That's the re-wet. You will get chicken broth. It will not have very much body, but the principle behind that, you re-wet the ingredients, you simmer it down, you get the second round of broth, you then add an additional pile of used tired ingredients to the tired chicken broth, do it again, and by the time you're done, you actually have a chicken broth. Now, I believe in making the most out of every ingredient in your kitchen. that one gets, you know, kind of on the edge for me. There have been times when I have been making a ton of chicken broth when I have done that. But to make it practical, you have to be making chicken broth pretty much by the gallon. So, all right. I'm going to finish straining all this. And then I'm going to get ready to run this through to get all the little particulate matter out of it. We did a pretty good job getting the fat. Does that show that tiny thin line at the top? So here's the chicken broth. Here's the thin line of fat, right? And when we get this cold enough, that fat will pop right off. We can just get rid of it that way. All these tiny little particles floating around in here though, I don't know if those shows up. Yeah, it shows up. Maybe. Probably not. All those tiny little particles, we have to have a finer strainer to do that. That's when you pull out coffee filters or cheesecloth. I prefer to use cheesecloth. Thinking Boone got the cheesecloth. So that's all we're doing at this stage. We're gonna get ready to do a final strain, and it'll be done at that point. All right, straining everything off. I'm trying to work in these clear containers so that y'all can see what I'm doing. And all I'm doing here is running this through, here's my strainer, and I've got it lined with coffee filters. Cheesecloth is better, I just can't find mine ever. I think because it makes really good parachutes for army guys. I can't find that, and I can never find my kitchen twine. All right, so this is all we're doing at this point, finishing off the straining. And then I'm gonna pop this in and let it chill to the point where I can pull off this layer of fat. Yeah. I actually let our chicken broth chill for 24 hours. Well, no, that was not right. It was, well, it was getting close. Yeah, it was almost 24 hours. Anyway, I threw it in the refrigerator. I let it get nice and cold because this is the easiest way to get the fat off the top. And let me show you what I'm talking about. Let it get nice and cold. I'm going to jiggle it, right? Because I want to show you a couple things. That tickles me always. All right, so all you do now is lift the fat right off the top, and you can discard that. But I want to show you something else before. I want to show you something else. You see how it acts like gelatin? That's because it is, right? Because that went for so long and it simmered at that nice slow pace for hours and hours, it really leached all the collagen, all the gelatin, and all of the connective tissues out of the chicken, out of the bones. And that's why, well, that's how you get gelatin, right? So you know, if you've got, talk about chicken jello, you know that if you've gotten to the point where you've got chicken jello, you probably have gotten as much out of that, the chicken and the bones and everything else, as you're gonna get. But it also means that you're gonna have a gorgeous, deep, rich flavor and a really lovely mouth feel, right? Because if you start tasting homemade broth and really savoring it, you know, there's gonna be a part of your brain that's like, oh my God, I had no idea. You can tell the difference. Really easy. All right, so I'm gonna get the last little bit of the fat off of here. Hi baby, you're not supposed to be up here. You're supposed to be, I built you a house. I built you your whole own house. I really did. They were rebuilding, I have a laundry room and an office built, and they built me some cat storage. And I was hoping that the kitties would take a hint and not come over here and see what I'm doing when I'm cooking. Most of them love kitty storage. Baby still wants to come over and see what I'm doing. All right, I've got almost every last speck. I'm gonna warm this up, and I'll show you what this gorgeous, beautiful stuff looks like when it's piping hot and ready to use. All right, so here we go. This is the most incredible chicken broth that you'll ever have. You can see straight through it. It is absolutely intensely aromatic and flavorful. And here's the test of a really good chicken broth. Or any kind of broth. Any good broth, you're going to want to do this. You dip your spoon in, and it tastes amazing. It tastes like something that you would have as a soup or a dish on its own. And I want you to notice, check out the color of that. We did not roast our chicken. This was simply from raw ingredients, right? So that's a pretty amazing thing to develop that kind of depth and richness. I'm proud of that. That's for being patient and letting it go low and slow for a long time. Okay, you can see straight through it. And make sure you want to take shots. This is ready to use, right? So we can use this just exactly the way it is. However, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to continue on our way toward consomme. You saw how thick and jelly-like that was when it was cold. All you do is heat it up and it turns right back into liquid. I, however, am going to do another round of exactly what we just did. We're going to go all the way to chicken consomme, and I'm going to show you how to do that next. Hey YouTube, thanks for watching, and if you thought that video was helpful, do me a huge favor. Hit like, hit subscribe, hit the little bell so you get a notification whenever I post a new video. And if you have a second, hop on over to Patreon and check out how to support my channel even more. Again, thanks for watching.